Yeah, all the rooms are closed. Everybody is successfully back. So yeah, hopefully everybody found that ran relatively smoothly. Sorry we couldn't make it into the rooms, but that was our little technical hitch of the day. So yeah, hopefully we can sort that out for the next event. So yeah, I guess really we just wanted to see whether anyone wanted to share the one thing that they think they will be able to do, and the one thing that they thought might be a bit more tricky, or a reason why it might not work. We're going to pop around each room. If you don't want to contribute, that's absolutely fine. But if you didn't manage to put it onto the post-it notes, Emma's going to kindly type it onto the post-it notes now. So anyone from room 1, do you want to just share your one things?
We didn't actually get round to deciding what the one thing was. We got brought back into this room quickly. So I think one of the interesting things that came up that some services are using a program called Isla. I'm not entirely sure, but it's about uploading real-time videos of clients to be able to analyse without having a face-to-face consultation in a clinic or a patient's home. Which can then be used for learning and joint working with students.
Obviously, you think that's one thing that could potentially work?
Potentially. It's not probably not the simplest of things to have chosen, but just quite an interesting, innovative thing that's happened since COVID, I suppose.
Fab, thank you. Anyone from group 2 want to share?
Hi Rachel, that was our group actually. So, and I was describing, we too didn't get down to a definitive what we can do, but we were having a discussion about some of those challenges where teams and services feel they've made quite a few offers already, and the reality of them not always being then taken up. So them finding, you know, actually what is the feedback as to what they most need to be able to do. So our discussion was a bit of a wider one around that.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. And one of the big sticking points at the moment is for students who are not car drivers or don't have access to a car at the moment. Obviously, with us being a large community trust, quite a lot of our placements we do often say, you know, a student needs to be a car driver, and that then kind of limits who the placement can be offered to. And I know certainly within the January placements for OT at the moment, we've put a lot of offers through that are car drivers only, and they just don't have car drivers in the cohort. So I guess it's just being really aware that actually, you know, the trust policy is we can car share if both parties are happy to do that. So, you know, if you can find a way to take your student out on some of your visits, they don't have to be with you in the car all the time, but it might be just selecting kind of a handful of face-to-face contacts where they do accompany you, but also then maybe complementing it with more virtual project work. So thinking of different ways of doing it, because I think that's definitely one of the biggest issues at the moment in terms of saying we have to have car drivers, when actually it does exclude a big number of students.
Yeah, and that's a really useful reflection, although it surprisingly, this wasn't about community visits, actually. It was about a more virtual offer for one of our professions, and them still not necessarily, the HI is not necessarily taking up all those offers. So just really the drive as to what the universities do want us to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what we're trying to do at the moment, kind of work with the universities to kind of figure that out, so we can, like I said at the beginning, kind of plan ahead a little bit more and think, right, okay, what are we going to need over the year? What the university is going to need, and how can we kind of allocate that out across the trust for placement. Fab. Anyone from group 3?
We were touching on similar themes in our group about car drivers and some of the pressures around that, picking up students without cars and transporting them, and also there was discussions about paediatrics or using small clinic rooms where you're not able to get in another student. So the option of having a student joining virtually for both those scenarios potentially. A student joining virtually into a small clinic room, or being able to join another specialism and give them an opportunity to see something that's a bit different, kind of through through remote means we thought was a viable option, or like I say, with the community placements, to do a mixture. So it might be that a visit at the end of the day wasn't going to work for a non-car driver, but potentially they could join that visit kind of virtually. So just thinking about those sorts of options we're having a chat about, but yeah, kind of aware of tech limitations in some rural areas, or limitations in other ways.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. Anyone from room 4 want to add in?
I'll stop there. So we had similar discussions to what everyone else is saying, but also we looked a bit about sort of actually us as professionals being open to changes, new ways of working, because actually it's a big challenge for us at the moment. We're still all going through that, but actually being open to any different ways of working, because I think before we'd be like, oh, if you try to do something online, but oh no, we can't do that. But actually now going, we do have to do it like this. How do we do it? And then incorporating students into the discussion as well about what works for them, because again we had sort of the discussion about, yeah, if you're part of an MDT and with the room limitations at the moment, trying to fit, you were talking particularly about the lady who had the 2 students, we said actually, you know, how would you then, that would limit someone from the MDT being there, that's the thing. So it's about trying to sort of, yeah, can people come in virtually as a student, that sort of thing was what we discussed.
Thank you. And I think with any kind of paired up kind of peer placements where you've got more than one student, it's about maybe looking at kind of timetabling. So one of the Practice Educator Toolkit resources is about kind of paired placements and thinking, okay, you know, if I've got one student with me 2.5 days a week and the other student physically with me 2.5 days, but kind of then they're splitting up the time and working on other things where they're not having to physically be kind of in the office, then yeah, I guess it's that bit of planning, thinking ahead about, you know, how you could manage it if that's something that you wanted to support. Thank you. And group 5, anyone?
Hello. I don't know if my camera's working. We were just saying about paired working as well, and potentially if there's 2 students and they're quite tech savvy, if for example someone on the community, there wasn't much space for 2 students to go in together, potentially one of them could be on this, they could take it in turns, one of them could be on the screen and then the other one could be kind of managing that, and they could go back and sort of go through it together afterwards and work it out that way.
Yeah.
So a lot of students are a bit more tech savvy, having been in uni and stuff and doing it for quite a while.
Yeah.
So, yeah, could potentially work.
Definitely. Even getting your student to teach you something tech-wise can be a great thing. So yeah, way ahead of me, definitely. Thank you. And room 6.
So yeah, I was in room 6, so we definitely sort of thought that blended is the way forward, a mixture of face-to-face and virtual, but also opportunities to use students to do things like literature reviews and things that maybe you've been meaning to do for ages, and then to present back, which is a good experience for them. And the barriers, it was again tech and transport, but we did wonder about if students had too many virtual experiences on placement, whether they would just not have that experience of face-to-face contact on qualification, which is really important. So
yeah, absolutely. I think it's like you said, it's that kind of blended approach and making sure that we are kind of touching all bases really, and yeah, kind of offering a variety of experiences. Yeah, thank you. And room 7.
That was, we didn't nominate a speaker. I'll speak. I mean, we did sort of mainly focus on the kind of how we've experienced student placements over this COVID period, mainly using sort of Teams, and we were sort of speaking about the opportunities that we found when we had plural educators, which would sort of support the kind of the part-time sort of workers, the part-time educators, and getting a lot more of that sort of support from the wider sort of MDT as well. And that would hopefully sort of help with the sort of contingency sort of planning. And then with regards to the sort of barriers, we've mentioned like the digital literacy and the digital sort of poverty, but I think one example, personal example, but I had to sadly fail a student my last experience, and to do that over Teams was a very impersonal, very sort of awful experience, when we had the university myself and the place, the student, which was her second placement as well, so that was putting an end to her sort of OT career, sadly, and it just was an awful, to have this interface as a way of kind of sort of navigating through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's thinking carefully about kind of how you deliver that kind of feedback, and how that feedback's kind of continuous along the whole placement as well. So although it's an incredibly difficult conversation to have, it's not a surprise for the student once you're kind of in that final meeting. But it's I appreciate it feels a lot kind of more impersonal on Teams than it does face to face.
Definitely.
Thank you. And I don't think there was anyone in room 8. Does anyone have anything they want to add that they haven't kind of had an opportunity to say at all? So I guess we're going to start wrapping up. We've got a feedback form which I somehow managed to embed a QR code in it. So if anyone does want to use a QR code, we might be able to do that. But Sally has also popped the link in the chat. It'll literally take you a minute to complete, maybe 2, depending on how much information you want to give. So it'd be really appreciated if you could do that before you leave. But I really just want to say thank you to everybody who's contributed and attended. And I guess what I will say, there's so many amazing examples of how people are working across the trust. We obviously haven't been able to capture every single one, and we're all really kind of we want to hear about these things. So we've got the newsletter that's coming out every 2 months, and just adding kind of experiences of people across the trust. We really want to hear from you, because these are stories that kind of really inspire people. They give people kind of tips and kind of pointers for how to do things. They might present a problem that you're facing that they've managed to problem solve. So I think any opportunities where we can kind of share these examples across the trust is just wonderful. So I guess if you have anything to contribute to the newsletter, to any of the practice placement resources, AHP students at nottshealthcare.nhs.uk. And if anyone needs any support or anything with setting up placements, if you've not taken a placement, not taken a student for a very long time and are still wondering, how am I do this? Just come to us. We're more than happy to kind of help work through any problems and kind of think up solutions.
We've got the drop sessions as well, haven't we, Rachel, where you every other month when we've not got the newsletter, there's a session just to drop in, but you don't have to wait for that if you want some support with helping to build a placement or just how to offer, etc. And hopefully with the web pages now live, there'll be places to put resources to share there, won't there? There's a real potential to develop that. And I know we've had some suggestions in the chat earlier from things already that people have spotted we could be adding on and putting in, so really helpful to get all that ongoing feedback and help to build that up and make it really useful for each of the professions that we will be taking students.
So the next drop-in is 7th of December, so it's from 12 till 1. So it's literally, come into it. You don't have to book or anything if you've got any questions, but like Sally said, you don't have to wait until the drop-in's there every 2 months as well. I'm trying to share this QR code because I'm very proud of it and it won't let me share it. So
I think I've put it in the chat already, Rachel. It's in the chat. I think, Suzanne, did you want to come in? You've got your hand up.
Thank you, Sally. I really just wanted to extend my thanks, but if you've got any last bits that that you wanted to talk about, I'm happy to come in at the end.
I guess just from my point of view, if anybody off the top of the head now does have something that what do you need next? What is it that you'd like to see? Like I said, we're always welcome to kind of any feedback, but if there's anything you think, oh, wasn't included in today that you think really could have been included or would be really beneficial going forward, then yeah, please do let us know.
You can always add comments in the chat as well, can't you, before you leave, if you've got anything burning you want to share right now.
Thank you. So that does seem the perfect opportunity for me just to step in to say thank you then. Thank you to Rachel, Sally and yourself, Emma, for curating this event. Believe me, I know these things are no mean feat, and all the incredible amount of work that goes on in the background to make these events happen. So thank you very much. And to all our colleagues who have either appeared on video or presented today, and to Alex as well. And of course, Shirley, I missed all of her presentation, but that looked like it was really enlightening and thought-provoking for all of us as educators and as clinicians, indeed, working within our teams. So a really valuable session. And I think in terms of where I reflect on where we've come from sort of 18 months ago, urging colleagues to consider how to deliver the contemporary placement in as COVID started, we've come such a long way, but really struck this afternoon by the enthusiasm and the creativity for how we can continue to do more, and how we can continue to work differently potentially still in these sort of really challenging times still within clinical practice. So yeah, it's been a really important and valuable event, and thank you for pulling it together, and thank you for bringing these resources to hand as well, so that we can continually adapt and move on from those. So thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you.
Don't forget to fill in the evaluation form, please, if you can, before you go. Thank you.
There's a comment there from Denise about sort of assisting students with disabilities and slash learning needs. I mean, probably worth mentioning that we're going to have some links in there to sort of learning styles and things like that. But in terms of assisting students with disabilities, that's perhaps something we need to really look at, isn't it? That would be really beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. I just popped a message back to Denise there just to see if she'd be happy one of us getting in touch just to find out a bit more about kind of what it is she feels would be beneficial. Because I'm sure it's not just Denise. I think if if one person thinks of something, I'm sure lots and lots of people are also thinking the same thing. So yeah, it'd be really useful to find out what would be beneficial there.
Yeah,
it might be a really good topic for another event as well, mightn't it? Because it's something that you want to be prepared for sort of before you need it, really, don't you? Before you need to be. So
interesting to link in with the universities to see what resources they have as well in that respect.
Someone enjoyed playing with Jamboard. I like that. After lots of worry that it just wouldn't work at all.
strangely addictive Jamboard, I think. Once you get going with the post-its, it's quite
yeah. And we'll share the slides from the Jamboard so everyone can see everybody's summaries on there as well. Okay, everyone. So I have started recording again, and we will launch into the second half because we've got quite a lot to cover in the second half. So I hope everybody's back. You can give me a wave if so. So in the second half, Sally, Emma and I wanted to cover how to actually do it. So how we create quality placements in the world as it is now. So I guess one thing to highlight here is that the pandemic has massively influenced how we deliver healthcare, and it's also kind of changed how we deliver practice placements. So I think it's definitely taught us that kind of there's no one size that fits all. There's not kind of one approach that's going to work for everybody. And it's really kind of forced us to revisit how we deliver our student placements across the trust. Now, traditional placements, in the sense that there are often kind of one student, one practice educator, maybe two practice educators, very clinical, very face-to-face, students in with you every day, are brilliant. They're excellent. And they're absolutely the right approach if that's what feels comfortable to you. And it's about finding kind of what works for you, what works for your team, really what kind of fits your skill set. So if that is the way that you want to deliver a placement, that is absolutely the way you should do it. But what we really wanted to highlight is that there are lots and lots of different ways. And it's about kind of finding out what works for you and your team in this new landscape. And I think our professional bodies and Health Education England have all really come to embrace these new ways of working, and they're really, really encouraging us to think quite creatively. So we have some really, really excellent examples from across the trust as to, you know, how people have adapted when things have been quite difficult, you know, how we've delivered more online placements. So what we'd like to do first off is to share with you an example from Claire. So Claire is a physio in the trust. I'm just going to quickly minimise the screen because I've just got a really bad feeling that I haven't shared the sound, so we're not going to be able to hear Claire, but hang on 1 second. Let me just unshare. And yeah, I didn't share the sound, so let me launch back into that. There we go. So, all being well, you should be able to hear from Claire talking about a placement that she's delivered in the last year, really working flexibly throughout the pandemic. If you can't hear or see anything, do let me know and I'll pop the link in the chat, or Emma or Sally can pop the link in the chat.
Hi there, I'm Claire Ellis and I'm a physiotherapist and I work in the cardiorespiratory team in Rushcliffe.
Thank you. Hi Claire. So we are talking about student placements today. Can you tell me a little bit about what you did for your last placement?
Yeah, so last winter we had 2 4-week student placements, so that was the winter of 2020 and also a time when our particular department was quite short-staffed. So we'd already made an offer to take students, but we did have to kind of reconsider how we were going to do this. Could we do it? Could we give the students a good placement? And that was what we really wanted to be able to do. So the main things that we kind of started off with was talking to the School of Physiotherapy, who were really supportive actually, to let them know some of the ideas we'd got, and we planned as much as possible in advance, actually thinking about how we could do things slightly differently. So from our perspective, our service had completely changed from the time when we'd had students before. Because of the pandemic, our face-to-face classes had been suspended, and we'd developed a new virtual and home-based sort of response to pulmonary rehab. So students would normally be involved in delivering exercise and education classes with group work, but that wasn't possible. But what we did do was get them involved in our new way of working. They learned how to put on PPE from the boot of the car in the middle of December, which is, you know, a learning point in itself. But there were lots of things that we could do, we found, to actually give them different experiences in this new landscape, I suppose.
That's fab. It sounds like a lovely kind of example of where you've really just been completely flexible and kind of fit everything around what the service and what the student needed at the time, which is, yeah, is wonderful to hear. Is there anything that you kind of wish you'd known beforehand, before kind of setting out and delivering the placement in that way?
Yeah, so I didn't actually mention that actually we were actually able to gain a laptop, which was the first time ever for a student. And I have to say, I don't think our placement could have continued without that. Yeah. So that was absolutely excellent. What wasn't so great for us at that time was it took us quite a while to get a smart card for the student who hadn't had one before, and so there was quite a delay in that. But it's good to see. I see recently this process has been made much smoother, and there's a now really nice, clearly defined pathway.
If you had one kind of top tip or piece of advice for anyone who was thinking of delivering a placement in a similar way, have you got anything to add at all?
Yeah, I think try not to compare your new offer negatively with your previous one, because we're all in this new landscape and there are lots of different opportunities. So think differently, think creatively, and have a go, see what works, and then share what works with the rest of us for the future. Yeah.
I love it. That's a great top tip. Brilliant. Actually got a little bit of feedback from your student as well here, and I think some of the really kind of positive things that they found were having that opportunity to spend kind of time with other healthcare professionals, really kind of enabled them to think more holistically. So although it might have been a little bit of a downside that they maybe didn't get as much kind of clinical contact as a physio, they were really able to kind of draw on the MDT experience to kind of enhance their learning. So it sounds as though it was a really, really positive experience for them.
That's great. Yes, and the student was great, and that always helps too. You know, she was really engaged, and it was her first community placement since COVID. So we were both learning together, I think, and I think there was a really good understanding. We were very honest about what we were able to do, and we just tried to work together really to make it as good as experience as possible. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. That's really, really helpful, Claire. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, I guess that highlights that, yeah, there's lots of different ways of doing things. We also have a really, really nice example from the OTs, a couple of OTs in MESOP, which unfortunately we haven't got time to watch today, but the link for the video is within the resources at the end of the presentation. So I guess, as Claire's highlighted, let's see if the slide will move on. Oh, there we go. Yeah, as Claire's highlighted, there's the clinical experience that you get within a placement and that kind of professional learning and those developing your specific professional skills are obviously absolutely vital, but it's not just about that. And I think this employability roadmap really, really highlights that, and it highlights the breadth of experience that a student will have when on placement. So, like I said, although those professional skill development is crucial at some point in their placements, you're also really, really looking at developing students' skills and knowledge for employability. So right, down from basics like communication, thinking about kind of how they self-manage, think about how they problem solve, how they can work flexibly, and professionalism alongside all of that. Also elements of leadership, and I know this is something that's really interesting to us. We recently delivered a leadership placement, so it was a completely non-clinical placement, and actually we were a little bit dubious about it at first, but the students got a lot out of it, and just really thinking about that kind of wider context of healthcare and how professions sit within that was really beneficial, and they feel like they got a lot out of it. So yeah, I guess really the point there is that a vast variety of experiences really, really kind of support learning, and a vast kind of variety of environments really support a student's development. I don't know if either Sally or Emma want to add anything to that at all. That's fine. So we'll hear from another colleague now, if I can get this one to work as well. Oh, Don't know what's happened there. Oh, sorry, it's embedded in the middle of the video, really small for some reason. Can everybody see?
My name's Becky Wilson.
Hear that?
I work as.
Is it showing on your screen properly, or is it showing as a little dot in the corner like on mine?
No, it's showing fine.
No, it's fine. It's fine, Rachel. Yeah.
Thank you.
An adult speech and language therapist, predominantly on the stroke unit at Kingsmill Hospital, and I also organise the student placements for the Nottinghamshire healthcare team. And I also work, because I'm based at Kingsmill, I know the specialist medicine team there as well. So one of the peer placements that I want to talk about was also at that setting.
Fabulous, thank you. So yeah, if you could tell me a bit more about that placement, that would be great.
So we had 2 paid placements last year. They were both from Sheffield for students at different stages of their courses. They were on some were on a master's course and some were on an undergraduate course. We had a 2-week placement where it was a 10-day placement over 2 weeks on the stroke unit, and we also had a 20-day placement over 4 weeks on the specialist medicine team. But as we're all based in the same hospital and in the same unit, we did a little bit of inter-team working to make sure that the students got like a really well-rounded placement. They worked, so each of the placements was predominantly the students working in pairs or individually managing the caseload. So definitely managing communication patients and taking case histories and planning sessions and evaluating their care. And also talking to sort of the NDT and any other kind of wider business that we have to do about managing patients rather than just face-to-face seeing them. But also from a dysphagia perspective, we were allowing them to hone their skills in that as much as possible. They won't be able to do that independently because they weren't signed off from that, but we were helping to support their dysphagia management skills as well. And with each of them, we had created a timetable. So they had opportunities to shadow OTs and physios, other members of the MDT, particularly on the stroke unit. And they also attended multidisciplinary team meetings and handovers, for example, in the morning. We also run a video fluoroscopy clinic every Wednesday, which is great for students to be able to attend. So every student had an opportunity to attend that clinic. And again, they did that on an individual basis, but it therefore meant that they could have time to do things independently as well as just doing things as a pair.
Fab. Can you tell me a little bit about what worked well, kind of setting the placement up in that way?
Yeah, I think it works great because there's less impact on the therapist, to be honest. The therapist has got definitely more free time, even in a busy hospital like we have. It's a 500-bed hospital. There's time for the students to even just learn to navigate around because there's 2 of them. I'm quite confident leaving them to get a little bit lost on the first day if they have to, and they're able to, if they need to go to a certain department to get the parking sorted, for example, even just with setting up the placement, they're able to go and do that without me necessarily hand-holding them as much as I did. And I feel also for their learning, it meant that as a pair, they were able to problem solve within sessions a lot more than they did before. So if I'd had somebody independently, that was a little bit more of an onus on me to be able to help them to reflect on the session and see how they might even plan the next session or what they might do. But having 2 of them to be able to discuss that together, I felt it really encouraged. Fortunately, we had students that worked well together and did benefit from this, and I realised that there's different student relationships and rapports, but in these 2 paired placements, that's worked very well.
Is there anything that you feel you kind of wish you'd known before kind of setting out offering the pair placements?
No, I feel we feel quite comfortable with the peer placements as they went. This year we have started doing COVID risk assessments, and obviously in the last sort of 18 months for students before they've come, and due to sort of more virtual technology, we've been able to do that online, so just meeting someone for half an hour and doing the COVID risk assessment, but also giving them the opportunity to ask any additional questions they might have around placements, which means that the students just had a better realise of expectations.
Wonderful. And finally, have you got kind of a top tip or just one piece of advice if someone was thinking of setting up a paired placement?
I think don't be daunted by it. I definitely think it's a brilliant opportunity. I'm not having individual placements again after I've had paired, definitely not. But I think you definitely need to set aside a bit of planning time and even some contingency activities, because having two people staring at you asking what to do when you've got a bit of a mind blank can be quite daunting. So it's nice to have a bit of a bank ready. But I think across our wider team, enough of us have had paired placements that we've got together a bit of a resource ideas that we've all got on the shared area to have a look at. So there usually is something that I can find for them to do.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you so much. And yeah, I think it's really, just really valuable for people to hear about that, because I know when I've spoken to people about having more than one student before, they've gone, oh, twice the work. But actually, what you said about actually reducing workload, I can totally relate to that, because I think, like you said, just and being able to problem solve together, and sometimes things get to you before they've sorted it out, and it's
definitely.
Thank you.
Claire Ellis.
Plan that again. Fab. Ooh. I'm just going to stop sharing a second because it's having a bit of a meltdown at my end. So yeah, I think Becky's really highlighted there that, we often think something's going to be a lot more work, but actually in practice it can end up being a lot smoother and a lot more straightforward than we think it's going to be. So sometimes biting the bullet and giving it a bit of a go and seeing what happens. So I'm going to hand over to Ed, who should be with us, Ed and Alex. So Ed is a physio in the trust, and Alex is a student who's currently on placement with him. And they're going to talk to us a bit about the placement that Alex is currently embarked on. So yeah, I will hand over to them. Are you here, Ed?
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
That's good. And Alex has just popped into view as well. So I'll kick off and sort of give a little bit of background to Alex's placement with us. So we'd agreed to take a student after lots of toing and froing, trying to find a student that wanted to come and be with us. So we'd agreed to take a student block, and then we kind of found out kind of towards the start date that the student who was going to come to us wasn't able to do any face-to-face contact with patients, and so that was a bit of a shock. And then I had to go back to the team and kind of really think, are we able to carry on, and are we able to deliver a placement? We have a constant kind of flow of students through, but we'd never really delivered a placement that was kind of different to normal. So one where we had to do other activities or do things in other ways. So I went back to think about how this could be done with a student. One student I'd had before had not been able to get out of Sheffield because of snow, and so I'd actually had him join some patient consultations on a video call through Teams, and it was kind of partly that I thought, oh yes, we could include that element into this placement if there's no face-to-face elements with patients. But it also kind of got us thinking as a team, as other things that student could get involved with for this type of placement. So there's always lots of development work that you kind of would like to do but never quite get to doing. And also at the moment I'm doing a secondment with Sheffield Hallam, looking at developing some videos and e-learning packages and student resources kind of to help with placement learning skills. And I thought, hey, this is a really good opportunity, not for me just to, come up with designs of the learning, but actually, if I've got a student with me, I can get their input and, not only help with, the jobs that need doing, but also kind of get some input. So I'll let Alex introduce himself, let you know about, he can tell you about his course and what his experience was kind of coming up to and starting the placement with us.
Right, so yeah, I'm Alex. I'm a student physiotherapist at Sheffield Hallam, and I'm on the degree apprenticeship. So I've just started my second year, and this is the first placement of the second year. And yeah, so like Ed had said it himself, I even myself expected to be going on placement in person, and it was all sort of at last minute that I realised that wasn't going to happen. So I was a bit worried how it was all going to work online. So thankfully with my course, a lot of that's already been online, so I've been used to sat on Zoom or Teams, similar things. So the fact when Ed said that it would involve that as part of visiting or joining the visits, I was quite happy with that, because it's something I'm confident with. But yeah, on the first day, I made sure to go through everything with me and make sure I understand sort of what I could be doing and what I will be doing over the course of the placement. And yeah, the fact that it has involved some of the clinical stuff still by joining the video calls, and some of the leadership development, and even joining Ed with his secondment, it's kept it interesting. And every day has been different. Even though I've been sat at a computer, it's still been different, which has been kept me engaged, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of it goes.
That's good. Yeah, we try to mix it up. So we often have like multiple supervisors for students, because we're very much lots of part-time working in different patterns of working. So we often have multiple supervisors. So there's 4 physios in the team, and we all kind of feeding into Alex's supervision, but all doing something a little bit different. So some of it's kind of remote clinical work. Some of it is to do with service development, so like putting together patient information leaflets and resources for patients. There's that element to it. Alex has joined in on some in-service training, where we were looking at NICE guidelines and thinking about service development, kind of pulling our service into line with those guidance. Probably should have mentioned that we're a community neuro team, so we see a mixture of stroke and other neuro conditions, and 99% of our work is done out in the community. So for Alex to join online, join consultations online was a little bit challenging. Fortunately, the locations that we've chosen so far to join from have had pretty good Wi-Fi. But I've been using my Trust laptop and my Trust smartphone to get Alex to join the calls, which has been good. But yeah, kind of learning how to use the tech well in this way has kind of been a bit of a learning curve. So laptops are pretty good for battery if you've kept them nicely topped up, but they're not very good if you've got the patient walking with a frame and you want to follow them around and see what access is like, or take them up the stairs, or you want to have a look behind their back to see what their spine's doing or what their posture is like. So we've had to sort of mix and match a little bit of laptop, a little bit of phone. So the laptop's nice for the patient to be able to kind of engage with Alex and see his face and have a bit of interaction that way. But the phone's been nice and flexible to kind of move around the property and do things and try things. And Alex has also been able to take more of a lead on some of the sessions and give his thought and guidance, which has been good, but it's not always. Sometimes I've had to interpret if the quality of the line's not been that good, or just the patient's hard of hearing. Sometimes kind of coming through with the audio on the tech is not quite as good as in the room. So that's had its own little limitations, but I'm still very hopeful that Alex will be able to kind of be leading more and more of the kind of the clinical sessions. And also taking part in some of the service development work and this side secondment project that I'm doing with Hallam around student learning for placements. So yeah, are there any other specific questions anyone's got? Rachel, do you want to jump back in with a question or comment?
I guess I was just going to comment again. It's about finding the way that works for you. Like, you two are obviously very tech savvy, and it works very well for you. And I'm sure that if somebody wanted to approach a placement in this way and needed some support, it's something that between kind of Sally, Emma, and Ed and I could help with. But it's not necessarily something that's going to work for everybody. I guess, what would you say has been the biggest kind of challenge so far?
I suppose it's just getting that balance. Want Alex to be doing stuff that's that's useful and helpful for him, I guess. So when you start thinking about it, there's loads of things that you can get a student to do, kind of either it's online e-learning, or there's always service development stuff you could do, or audit, or training for rehab assistants, and there's lots of different things. So it's having a good bank of ideas, but then hopefully get Alex's input, and there'd be things that align with his objectives that are more useful, more interesting. So yeah, I'm always hoping to get Alex's input on what can be done, because there's more than enough work and ideas, really. It's just kind of keeping it focused and interesting, and I think Alex has enjoyed the variety. And I suppose my hope would be that he would be taking some things to like a first job interview that would be a little bit different and interesting to maybe other students. He would have things to say that he's been involved with that other students may not have. So that would kind of be my hope. So I don't know what other thoughts you've got, Alex, about this sort of placement, and how it compares, or what you'd hope to gain that might be different to a normal placement.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely there's more sort of non-clinical side of things, like doing the leadership development, and even working on the secondment. They're things that I don't think I would have done on any other placement, because when you're if you're in there in person, you generally just join the people what they're doing day to day. Whereas with this, I can sort of, even things like when Ed's traveling to one of the patients, I can be working on something else, whether it's preparing the session that we might do, or checking up on notes, or even if I've got the other bits of work that I can be doing as well. I found that like I said, there's never been a time when I'm just sat twiddling my thumbs. There's always things to do. All the supervisors being able to give me little ideas on what I could work on, and then like you said, I can say, oh yeah, I might want to work on this, and if everyone's usually been happy for me to work on things that work towards my goals for the placement. So yeah, with that, it has been really good.
Yeah, one of the things that I was hoping that would be sort of beneficial for the team is that Alex could sort of do things behind the scenes whilst you're with a patient. That's been really useful. So you've got quite a complex patient. Alex has been able to take notes. So he's been able to kind of draft up some notes kind of based on all the observations and the conversations that we've had. So when it comes to actually note writing, it's only a case of kind of tweaking and brief discussions, really, to get the notes all up and ready and right. And you can have a good, can be with a patient for a good hour. So there's an awful lot of discussions and observations that need to be documented. So for Alex to have doing 90% of the note writing kind of during and after the session, in between kind of patients, and also inputting, so like using different outcome measures, and Alex is able to kind of look up online outcome measures and then kind of prompt me as to which elements needed doing, or help me with the timing and evaluation of some of the elements. So it's really quite nice just having someone on your shoulder, just being able to kind of input and help out. And so from a team point of view and a supervisor's point of view, that's kind of something that's a bit of a novelty, but we have discussed it as a team that actually joining other people's face-to-face visits by video call is something that I'd like to do a little bit more of. Either a rehab assistant goes out to review somebody, and it may not need you to be there, but they may just have a few kind of queries. So sometimes if we've got a patient that's ready to be discharged, you might go out and do that sort of final review, whereas when you come away, you think, actually, I probably didn't actually need to go then. I could have just seen the assistant kind of, doing their final contact with the patient, or you might want to pull in expert advice for another team member. I've done it with OTs, kind of having a look at some splinting, and not done a double visit, but I've just pulled them in for 5-10 minutes whilst I looked at a splint on a video call, and was able to sort out the problem there and then. So it's kind of opened our eyes as to other possibilities, kind of above and beyond kind of working with students in different ways, as to how it could work as a team slightly differently to, save on a bit of time, and make things happen a bit quicker potentially.
Fab, thank you very much. I just noticed a comment from Denise saying hats off to you guys for making it work. and it's something that we can kind of learn from, and it's definitely one of the kind of practice educator resources that we'll be pulling together. So we'll be calling on you guys for support with that. Thank you very much. That's really interesting. So we're just going to watch one final video from Charlotte and Amy, giving us an overview of how they've kind of done things within the dietitian team. And then what we're going to do is launch into a bit of an interactive event. So we've got Jamboard back. We will see how that goes for this session. I'm just going to quickly share this final video. Here we go. If you can let me know if you can see that okay.
Yes, we can.
And hear it, hopefully.
So I'm Charlotte. I'm a community dietitian based in Midnotts.
My name's Amy, and I am one of the community dietitians and the student lead for the department.
Thank you very much for speaking to me today. So we're going to be chatting about student placement that you have facilitated. So I guess if we can start by just telling me a little bit about what you did.
So I guess we've always been quite flexible because we're a small team in our approach. So we've done joint placements with Sherwood Forest Hospital because that gives students a bit of opportunity to see acute and community settings, and also because we are small teams, that means we can take more students. And we also have shared our training with other dietetic colleagues in the trust. So, for example, the dietitians in eating disorders and in CAMS, they've contributed to our placements as well. But more recently, due to COVID, we've been working more remotely, like most people. So we've had to adapt the way that we work with students a little bit. So we've been implementing more of virtual consultations when we're not doing face-to-face. And we've also been supporting Nottingham University with their 8 placements that used to be face-to-face. We've switched those to virtual placements. So because of the way we've worked, I think that's allowed us to take more students in the past year. So when actually at a time when we thought we'd be taking less students, we've managed to take more. So it's all kind of helped. The way that we've changed working's actually helped us be a bit more effective.
Fab. Are there particular things that have worked really well, kind of out of those kind of new ways?
Yeah, definitely. We found that students as well as staff have adapted incredibly well to remote working. It was definitely less daunting than we first thought as well, which is great. Had great feedback from students and we were able to pass them as well. And, working with teams, that's enabled us to catch up with students remotely. This has worked really well, especially for split placements, where, for instance, a student might be at Kingsmill Hospital, but they might want to catch up with us briefly about an assessment tool. So rather than having to, travel or, carry out a telephone call where, might not be able to explain in much detail, catching up remotely with video calls has been really great for that purpose. Also, it's given students more of a range of opportunities, so it's a really good blend for our students. That's been good as well.
Fab. So it's really kind of exposing students to the realities of how we all work now.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there anything that you kind of think you wish you'd known beforehand, kind of doing things slightly differently?
Yeah, technical issues, hindsight is a wonderful thing there. I suppose it's just appreciating that there's always going to be, some limitations, and just appreciating what these challenges might be. What works best when working remotely as well. That would have been good to know. For instance, when students are working remotely over Teams and we're trying to make a phone call, understanding what works best there, and just general logistics in terms of how the consultations would work step by step, and also just having backup plans as well. COVID is still about, so just appreciating that there might be ongoing challenges, and that's the beauty of having virtual ways of working virtually and remotely, is that we can allow for that.
Excellent, thank you. If you guys had one top tip or kind of one piece of advice for clinicians who are maybe thinking about, you know, going a bit more virtual or doing things a bit differently, if you've got anything to add?
I think the main thing would be to embrace the change, because actually it's not as daunting as it kind of first seems when you work through it. Even technology, I'm not the most technological, can't even say it. But yeah, so embracing technology and kind of and planning ahead with it. So we found it's worked to our advantage. It's meant we could be a bit more flexible, especially at this point in time with COVID. And also, actually, it's led to better placements for the students and more opportunities for the student to see more things. So definitely embrace the change. It's a good thing.
Fantastic top tip, thank you. That's great, thank you so much. Yeah, really, really helpful just to hear all that, because I think, yeah, it's when we talk to people about placements, there's a lot of, oh, well, I can't possibly do it because I'm not doing a lot of face-to-face, or I'm not doing this, or I'm not doing that. And actually, yeah, to kind of just hear that actually you can do it. It's just, yeah, getting stuck in there and, like you said, kind of embracing that change.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Lovely. Thanks, Rachel. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for taking the time.
Anytime.
See you guys soon. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, bye.
So I guess, as we can see, there's some absolutely amazing examples coming out from across the trust, and I want to say thank you to everybody who contributed there, because it's just so inspiring to hear kind of how people are working. I'm going to hand over to Emma to just have a think a bit about, you know, we've obviously seen there's lots of different ways of delivering quality placement, so she's just going to kind of briefly go through what a quality placement is, really.
Thanks, Rachel. So yes, what is quality? So I guess the first point that we raised there is you know, it's been referred to in a few of the videos there about, you know, the fact that COVID has changed the way we work significantly, has made us really reevaluate how we provide quality placements for students, and we've got some really good examples of how that's working in practice. So, you know, giving a realistic account of how we're working currently, and as it says, no sugarcoating. We want students to experience the reality of how the NHS is now, considering the impact that COVID has had and is continuing to have. So yeah, Rachel, it was referred to in one of the first videos about, you know, not comparing what you offered prior to COVID negatively to what your sorry, I've not said that correctly. So not really comparing what you're providing now negatively to what was provided before COVID, because as we've said, there's lots of positive impacts that we can have, lots of positive experiences that we can provide, certainly with regard to the virtual nature of interventions we're having with our clients, but also as with the virtual placement that Ed is providing currently, lots of different and varied opportunities. So quality, yes, what is that it's well planned but not rigid. So again, looking at providing that enough information to the student before their placement, make sure they know what to expect, so they understand what the placement is going to be about before they get here, so there's no surprises. So that could be providing that pre-placement information about the service. You know, it might be simple stuff about how they're going to get there, you know, bus routes, maps, that sort of stuff. Finding out from the student what is important information for them. They may not be, they may be new to the area, so they may not know Nottingham. So we've got to consider all of these things. It doesn't want to be rigid, so we've got to have flexibility, so things don't always go to plan. So as it's been mentioned in some of the other videos there, you know, have a bank of resources that you might refer to or rely on if things don't go to plan, so that you can pull from those. And it provides just the right challenge. So everybody is an individual. So again, talk to the student about what works best for them in terms of their learning style. In terms of supervision, what would they find most useful? And it's about planning those activities, so ensuring that supervision is regular and you provide the right kind of feedback. And that's where you can also benefit from feedback from the students. So it's a two-way process. And it's more about more than clinical learning. So as Rachel said earlier, you know, think about the employability roadmap. It's not just about the clinical skills that they're learning. It's about the broader aspects of what they need to be a professional AHP. It's about the leadership skills. It's about their time management. It's about their ability to reflect and learn as an individual. Yeah, and it isn't perfect. So as we know, nothing goes to plan all the time. So, you know, it's about real life. It's about providing the best experiences and a variety of experiences and opportunities that we can, and planning ahead as best as we can.
Fab, thank you, Emma. So I'm going to hand over to you guys. So we have a bit of a group activity just right at the end of the day, just to keep everybody awake. So we're going to divide you up into breakout rooms, and we have another Jamboard link. So fingers crossed this one works okay. And what we'd like you to do, for each group, we have 2 questions. So on the Jamboard, if somebody could pop that into the chat, you'll see there's 20 different slides. So each slide, the first slide has a bit of a summary of kind of ideas. So we've drawn together some of the ideas we've heard today and some of the kind of ideas from resources just about how placements might be delivered, different kind of ideas. So ranging from, you know, doing a virtual induction right through to how you might develop a piece of project work for a student. And then from slide 2 onwards, you will see numbers in the top left-hand corner, and that is whichever breakout room that you're assigned to. So you have, like I said, 2 slides. So you'll have one for putting down the opportunities, so what might work for you and your team at this time. And then the second slide for your team, for your group, you have barriers. So what might be difficult and what support might you need to be able to kind of deliver placements. Then towards the end of the presentation, if you click right through to the last couple of slides on Jamboard, we've already set up post-it notes for each group. So what we'd like you to do is just pop on there one takeaway point for each of the questions per group. And hopefully at the end, we'll get a little bit of time to feed some of those back. Does that make sense? What I'll do, I'll show you the Jamboard just so you can see what you're going to see. So you've got your first slide, which has your kind of ideas that you can go back to at any point. You've got your question, that this one's for group 1, for example, so that's the biggest barriers. And then the final couple of slides, there's one thing you might try and one thing that might get in the way is on the next slide. So you can just add to the post-it note that's already on that slide. Does that make sense? What I'll do is I'll stop sharing just so I can get onto Jamboard.
I think it's worth saying that if you click on the post-its that say group 1, group 2 or whatever in the last 2 slides, you can then type directly onto it. You don't have to add another sticky note.
Yeah, thank you. And what we'll do, so I'm going to assign everybody to a breakout room, and all being well, Sally, Emma and I will pop into the breakout rooms and just kind of give you guys some support if needs be. So we might be in and out, so don't be surprised if we jump in. Let's have a look. See if this works okay. So there's approximately 6 people per breakout room, and there's 8 groups altogether, and everybody's been assigned randomly. So I'm going to open the rooms, and you'll have 20 minutes in your room, and we will give some little warnings as to when you're running out of time, and what will happen, you'll come back to the main room after 20 minutes. And hopefully if you've got to the point of populating those final 2 post-it notes, we can have a bit of a chat about kind of what people have discussed. Does that sound okay? Does anyone have any questions?
I was just going to say, Rachel, if people do have any questions and the facilitator isn't in their group at the time, can they nip back into the main meeting and ask?
Absolutely. So yeah, the main meeting room will stay open, so there's the ability to pop back. So yeah, if anything goes wrong or if anyone gets booted out of a breakout room, you'll come back into the main room. I'll keep an eye on that. So can everyone see the Jamboard link in the chat if you managed to access that okay? Fab. Okay, I will assign people to rooms and let's see how it goes. Hopefully everybody's gone.
Well, there's only us 3 left, so hopefully.
Yeah,
They've all
I know
gone
there's
where
quite a few people dropped off since I allocated, so whether there's going to be a room with like one person in it, I don't know. We might have to.
Can you see?
Let's have a look.
Room 6, it says it's a bit noisy here. Hello, everyone.
So room.
I think that's just Fred's got noise in her background, is it? Maybe. I don't know.
I see.
So room 1, I've got 4 people in. Room 2, 4 people in.
Just to be aware, we're still recording, I think.
Oh yeah, shall I stop recording? Stop recording.